Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. We have some very good breaking news today for the Conservative Party of Canada, and that is after a judicial recount, the riding of Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, has flipped from the Liberal Party to the Conservative Party. On election night, the Liberals had won it by 12 votes, and now after the recount, the Conservative, Jonathan Rao, has won it by 12 votes. So we just had the results color change, but the actual margin did not change. This has actually been a very good day for recounts for the Conservatives, or basically non liberals. In Nunavut, the riding ended up being held by the NDP after a recount. They actually had hundreds of votes to count, and the NDP was only leading by like 40 votes. And after the recount, they were leading by like 41 votes. So that one is going to stay in the hands of the NDP. Now, I don't like the NDP, but I'd rather they have it and create chaos in Parliament than the Liberals have it and be closer to a majority. And then the Conservative candidate who ended up winning the riding of Windsor Tecumseh Lakeshore ended up holding on to that riding after the recount by 4 votes. Windsor Tecumseh Lakeshore, originally on election night, the Conservative had won it by like 250 votes, which in federal politics is not a very big margin at all, but it is certainly bigger than 4. But that demonstrates if you show up and you vote, sometimes good things happen. Because let me be very clear. Let's go back to Terra Nova, the Peninsulas. That was not supposed to be a winnable riding for the Conservatives. Windsor Tecumseh Lakeshore, not supposed to be a winnable riding. In fact, guys, this has resulted in one of the things I wanted on election night to happen, and it looked like it hadn't happened because of the Liberals getting Terra Nova on election night. But we now have Bluefinland. Bluefinland is now a thing. Yes, the Liberals did win ridings on Newfoundland around St. John's, but it's St. John's. It's a bigger city with hipsters in it or whatever, and I guess they all vote Liberal. And then Labrador is more Quebecois, so it ended up voting Liberal, whatever. But the main part of the island in Newfoundland is the territory I now dub Bluefinland because it is all blue. That demonstrates the power of connecting with voters on issues they care about. The Conservative Party did an excellent job in Newfoundland because they promised to bring back the seal hunt, which is absolutely required if you want to maintain large fishing stocks. And they were going to wipe out the stupid fishing quotas that the Liberals have been implementing that makes what is already a part-time seasonal business in Newfoundland almost impossible to sustain, because what you're allowed to catch is so low, you may as well just move to a different province and enroll yourself in another industry. It was ridiculous. Conservatives did a great job with those people. They also did a very good job on crime and drugs, which especially appeals to specific communities like Chinese Canadian communities in both the Richmonds in Ontario and BC, in Markham, in I think another place is Danforth, not Danforth, somewhere else. But there's another heavy Chinese Canadian populated riding or city in Canada, Vaughan. There we go. And the thing is, when the Conservatives were actually messaging on those things that mattered to people there, they won. But in so many places, I found like they lacked vision and they didn't really, connect with people who were anxious about Trump and America. It's not because those were unwinnable voters because they had like their minds wiped by the mainstream media and they were just anxiety voters about Trump. It's just because there was no other conservative message to win them. The Conservatives basically just messaged those people with like a generic change message, which I thought was very foolish. You need something more than just change when people are scared. You have to say, okay, you're scared about the Trump tariffs, but guess who's weakened our economy so much that we're basically here for the taking? That was Trudeau and the Liberals, as well as Mark Carney acting as the economic advisor for 5 years. But let's not go too deep into that today because it is a day for celebration. I think I had some other tabs here I wanted to pull up for you guys to go over some of the fun stuff that's been happening. But I actually do want to get to what was actually kind of weird in the in Windsor Tecumseh Lakeshore recount. And this isn't like saying, oh my goodness, the election's rigged. If anything, this should be evidence to you it's not rigged. The recounts went in the direction the Conservatives wanted. Even Terrebonne right now, the Liberals won that by one vote. But now there's all these Elections Canada issues coming out where they were sending people the wrong returning addresses for their mail-in ballots, and a lot of those people who wanted to return a mail-in ballot and did, and then had the letter bounced back because it wasn't the right address, were Bloc Québécois voters. So that might actually end up going to a by-election as that case is being basically adjudicated in front of the court. So all this has actually been going pretty well for the Conservatives. But at the same time, people should look into how the Liberal swings in these recounts have been so large. It's not because something's going on, well, or at least what's going on is massive incompetence. I want all of the votes counted on election day, whereas it seems like poll boxes or whatever are not being counted from these very liberal sections of the riding, or maybe it's that liberals are more likely to return mail-in ballots in most cases. And so what we're having held back is a bunch of mail-in ballots that are taking weeks to be able to find and then count, which opens up people to a lot of understandable suspicion that it looks like, the Liberals see that this riding's within 180 votes. How can we find enough Liberal votes to win? Now, I don't think that's what's going on, but when the processes are this incompetent, goodness, people are going to start concluding that. And it's really not their fault for concluding it. Elections Canada, and by extension, Elections BC, Elections Alberta, Elections Saskatchewan, all the elections organizations, they suck at this. But Kirk Lubimov here makes a good point. He says Conservatives hold on to a 4-vote win after a judicial recount in Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore riding. From the preliminary recount, Liberals added 418 new votes and Conservatives added 189 new votes, while 119 new votes found and hundreds rejected. So 119 votes was like the discrepancy in results. So 119 votes were now found. They weren't even part of the original count. And that's not like rejected ballots that are now being counted because, oh, actually the person did mark Conservative and the person, 2 votes stuck together and they didn't count it. No, this is not like rejected votes now being counted. These are like votes they never counted because they usually will show you how many votes were rejected on the tallies. These are just 119 from somewhere. And Elections Canada should answer on where this stuff is coming from because it's ridiculous that we're having to just take their word for it that nobody threw in an extra vote at the very end hoping it would tip the balance. But whatever. And look at this. The Green Party lost 331 votes after the recount. Now, that's a little insane because, so up here is the results on election night after presumably, or at the time we presumed all the votes were counted. There were 70,000 votes, 70,019 votes, and then it bumped up to 70,138 after the recount. But think about that. The Green Party had 799 votes. And after the recount, they have 468 votes. Now, again, what the heck is going on down there? That seems almost like someone was deliberately doing something. Again, I'm not saying the election's rigged or something like that, but at very least, there probably is some sort of bad actor. Maybe it's even a Green Party person who's ended up counting the votes, and they're just counting things as Green Party because, screw you, I like the Green Party. And if that's going on, that person should be fired, and we should be getting to the bottom of this. We keep having these stupid anomalies where, yeah, it really wouldn't tip the balance in most ridings, but at the same time, we should have every single vote counted accurately. It's like the BC election. Now we have still all of these disputes going on because you had these lodges sending in mail-in ballots for people who were frankly mentally incapable of voting, or people who didn't have access to their own IDs, and somehow a vote which requires access to your ID is being sent in on their behalf. Or a ballot box of 1,200 or 800 votes is going missing in the BC election, and then that happened again in the Elections Canada, organizing of this election where a box of 822 special ballots went missing. It's just incompetent. And the funny thing is, it's like the Liberals want people to start saying the election's rigged so then they can run against the fact that their opponents are election deniers. When most people are just mad at how poor quality the vote counting is, it's just there's constant slowdowns. Polls are taking literally days to finally count, and you're wondering, guys, we're just hand counting. How can people not figure out how to do this? And so Yeah, I think the liberals are almost incentivized not to fix the problems, not because they're going to win an election because of these problems next time. More so, they just like messaging against conservatives to be like, oh, they think we have electoral issues. Ergo, you're an election denier, and people should vote for us because the other guys are election deniers. That's really the game they're playing here. If I can slot something else in this video, so overall, this is very good. NDP holds onto Nunavut. I don't know how to say it. The Conservatives hold on to the Windsor riding. Really big gain. Demonstrates how well they did with working class voters, that they ended up winning both Windsor ridings that the Conservatives hadn't won since the 30s or the 50s. It's nuts. And now we have the Conservatives picking up Terra Nova and the Peninsulas, and we may have the Bloc Québécois be able to pick up Terrebonne after a judicial determination if there needs to be a by-election. But one more thing I want to touch on is I loved that video from election night of Jamil Javani going after Doug Ford and the fake conservative PC party in Ontario. The PC party in Ontario sucks. I will always encourage you guys, go sign up for the email list for the New Blue Party of Ontario. It's not being like a purity party like the PPC is, where they just get all they're doing is saying that the conservatives are just not conservative enough. The New Blue Party is basically saying, hey, that 2018 PC platform was actually pretty good. Maybe we should actually implement it. So they've based a party around actually doing the things the PC party originally said they were going to do back in 2018 and completely dropped it because they've just determined they don't need conservative voters to actually win. They'll just win by getting a bunch of crossover liberals to show up for them. But Jamil Javani, a great new MP, he is fantastic. He was technically already an MP from Durham, but that was only a year of him being the MP for Durham. And now he's, I think, Beaumont or something like that. He's the MP for, but he did not get a shadow cabinet position. And I do not know why. I don't know who is advising Pierre Poilievre to not give Jamil Javani a cabinet position. He's now pushing this great petition to end the current TFW structure. Just eliminate the TFW program, maybe replace it with something reasonable where it only applies to high-skill temporary foreign workers and not low-skill workers who end up working at fast food restaurants. He's a great advocate for real conservative positions. So why isn't he in shadow cabinet? And I see in shadow cabinet right now, there's a bunch of people I just think are complete clowns. Most of the people in the Conservative Party and the shadow cabinet are great. There's really great people in the shadow cabinet. But then you get people like, let's just say it, Jisraj Halan, who admitted to at one point not that long ago being a gangster. And then he also, I apparently heard, faked having an accounting degree. So he's now our finance shadow critic, despite the fact that the man doesn't actually have any background in accounting or finance or anything. It's stupid. But Jamil Javani doesn't get in, probably because they thought that was very bad that he criticized Doug Ford. You should criticize Doug Ford. He sucks. He's just fat Trudeau. So why? Oh, but he could be an ally. No, he can't. We don't need him to win the election. We got a higher percentage of the vote in Ontario than Doug Ford did. So if you just push harder and you just focus on winning those people who were nervous anti-Trump voters, you can win. And you don't have to go hardcore anti-Trump to win those voters. You just have to talk about issues that end up actually stirring up the conversation. Run against immigration. Run against the temporary foreign worker program. Do things like cut all tax brackets. Do something that really makes you seem like the change candidate rather than just saying you're the change candidate. Poilievre's a very good leader. At the same time, he needs people around him who will let him be the best version of himself, because there are people around him like Jenny Byrne and other individuals who more so shadow Jenny Byrne, who just always want to risk manage. Just risk manage. She's not a campaign manager. She is a risk manager. She's never won an actual tough election, at least to my knowledge. She keeps constantly bringing up, oh, I helped Doug Ford win in 2018. I helped Poilievre win the leadership in 22. Oh my goodness, get a real accomplishment, lady. That's not real. You lost in 2015 for Harper. You lost for Poilievre in 2025. Is there another election there where you pulled victory out when it wasn't expected? No, she won easy races and she's lost winnable races. I think that's someone who shouldn't be within 5 miles of the Conservative Party HQ. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, also the rig nominations and whatnot, which I had firsthand experience with. This is becoming a very rambly video. See, I cover the actual hot button news topic, and then some of you stick around to hear me just kind of complain about stuff. But that's what happens on the Wyatt Claypool show, or whatever this whole thing is called. Anyway, so I'll see you guys later. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment, do all that stuff. I'm going to be back in Victoria next week. So if you watched my Victoria story, do that because it might get crazier. I'll even link my Victoria story in the description below and the comments if you haven't seen it yet. It's fun. It's like 40 minutes of me talking about MLAs who, like in the BC Conservative Party, conservative, attacking me because they're woke. By the way, most people in the BC Conservative Party, the MLAs, are good people, but they are being held hostage by the stupidity and spinelessness of John Rusted, who lets basically the few woke MLAs completely run the caucus. See, I keep going into new rants, but that's just, again, what happens here on the show. But thank you, Bluefinland. Thank you for reducing the size of the Liberal minority government. I was about to say majority, minority government. See you guys later.